Space has been central to global infrastructure for decades, with the U.S. spearheading developments for over 40 years. More than 60 nations have thrived from free and open access to space, igniting a rapidly growing industry. However, space is becoming increasingly competitive. To address this, the U.S. Space Force was founded to defend its space assets and advance technologies for future missions. While many people's only exposure to Space Force is through Steve Carell's comedy series, the reality is far more captivating. So, what does the U.S. Space Force actually do, and why should you care? The Space Force motto, Semper Supra, is Latin for always above, a phrase that encapsulates the service's mission. So, let's explore the fascinating roots of the Space Force. The United States Space Force traces its origins to the Army, Air Force, and Navy's military space programs created during the beginning of the Cold War. Space forces first participated in combat operations during the Vietnam War and have participated in every United States military operation since, most notably in the Persian Gulf War, referred to as the First Space War. The Strategic Defense Initiative and the creation of Air Force Space Command in the 1980s marked a renaissance for military space operations. Proposals for the U.S. Space Force were seriously considered during the Reagan administration as part of the Strategic Defense Initiative. The U.S. Congress began exploring the establishment of a Space Corps or Space Force in the late 1990s and early 2000s. The idea of establishing a Space Force was resurrected in the late 2010s in response to Russian and Chinese military space developments, resulting in the Space Force's establishment on December 20th of 2019 during the Trump administration. The Space Force is organized as part of the Department of the Air Force alongside the U.S. Air Force, its co-equal sister service. The Department of the Air Force is headed by the Civilian Secretary of the Air Force, while the U.S. Space Force is led by the Chief of Space Operations, the U.S. The Space Force's status as part of the Department of the Air Force is intended to be an interim measure towards a fully independent department of the Space Force led by a Civilian Secretary of the Space Force. Now, why is the Space Force so important? Do we need the organization? Well, let's find out. The Space Force was established to rapidly respond to evolving threats from Chinese and Russian systems, anti-satellite weapons, hypersonic missiles, and cyber threats to space systems. As space exploration and utilization continue to advance, new challenges threaten global security and prosperity. Satellite vulnerability, the proliferation of space debris, and the potential for space-based warfare have urgently needed a dedicated military branch to address these space-related threats. Satellites, critical infrastructure for modern communication, navigation, and surveillance, are susceptible to various threats. Cyber attacks can disrupt data transmission, while anti-satellite missiles can destroy or disable satellites, crippling global communication and navigation. Signal jamming and eavesdropping also pose significant risks to national security. These vulnerabilities underscore the importance of protecting satellite constellations and ensuring the continuity of space-based services. The growing problem of space debris further complicates the situation. Defunct satellites and debris in orbit pose collision risks to operational satellites, threatening to exacerbate the already congested orbital environment. This congestion hampers satellite navigation and communication, with far-reaching consequences for global commerce, transportation, and national security. Debris generated through anti-satellite missile tests and satellite malfunctions only exacerbates the issue. Beyond these specific challenges, the broader landscape of space-based threats demands attention. Chinese and Russian space-based surveillance can compromise national security, while hypersonic missiles pose significant detection and interception challenges. The potential for space-based warfare necessitates dedicated military capabilities to counter emerging threats. The United States Space Force is vital in safeguarding national security, economic interests, and continued space exploration in response to these complex challenges. By developing expertise in space operations and threat mitigation, the Space Force ensures integrated command and control, driving research and development to counter emerging threats. A robust space military presence also serves as a deterrent, discouraging adversaries from exploiting space vulnerabilities. The Space Force addresses these challenges head-on, ensuring the protection of national interests and the continued advancement of space exploration and utilization. So, what role does Space Force play? How do their operations contribute to our daily lives? Let's delve into that. The United States Space Force has a clear and vital mission: secure our nation's interests in, from, and to space. This mission statement is more than just a phrase. It's a call to action that guides the Space Force's every move. But what does it mean to secure our nation's interests in space? Let's examine the Space Force's statutory responsibilities and core functions to understand this. The Space Force is organized, trained, and equipped to provide three key capabilities: freedom of operation, ensuring the United States can operate freely in space, from space, and to space. The Space Force conducts space operations, that is, military operations in space, to support national objectives and protect national interests by safeguarding American interests in space from threats and aggression. The Department of Defense expands on these responsibilities, tasking the Space Force with providing prompt and sustained space operations, deterring aggression, and conducting space operations to protect national interests. To achieve its mission, the Space Force focuses on three core functions: space superiority, which defends against space and counterspace threats by protecting spacecraft in space or against attacks enabled by adversary spacecraft, requiring the Space Force to establish control of the domain. The Space Force describes that at a time and place of the United States choosing, it must be able to assure continued use of spacecraft and deny adversaries use of their spacecraft or space-enabled capabilities. Missions that support space superiority, including orbital warfare, electromagnetic warfare, and space battle management. Another one is the Global Missions Operation. This involves integrating joint functions across all domains: land, air, maritime, space, cyberspace, on a global space. The U.S. military and its allies can see, communicate, and navigate through space. Global missions operations also protect U.S. forces on Earth through early warning of incoming missiles and other attack types. The Space Force describes global mission operations as allowing the rest of the U.S. military to defend the air, land, and sea. Missions that support global mission operations include missile warning, satellite communications, positioning, navigation, and timing. The evolving threats in space necessitate a dedicated military branch. To meet the challenge, the Space Force has developed an impressive array of innovative architectures, which include distributing vulnerable GEO capabilities to LEO and MEO, establishing proliferated architectures, establishing an orbital transport layer, significantly increasing the pace of launches, adding on-orbit and ready-to-launch spare spacecraft, and incorporating commercial capabilities. Lastly, assured space access ensures that the Space Force can deploy and sustain equipment in outer space. This includes space launches and controlling and steering spacecraft out of the way of oncoming space debris in order to avoid collisions. The Space Force describes assured access to space as ensuring it can continue to launch and conduct space operations at all times. Missions supporting space access include launch, range control, cyber, and space domain awareness. Now, how has this organization evolved over the years? Are they following the AI trend? Well, let's find out. The U.S. Space Force is undergoing intensive modernization efforts as a new service. The Deep Space Advanced Radar capability is intended to track objects in geosynchronous orbit with 3 sites, one in the United States, one in the Indo-Pacific, and one in Europe. Colonel Nathan L. Ivan, Acting Chief Technology and Innovation Officer for the United States Space Force, emphasizes the importance of a unified approach across data, analytics, and AI activities to remain competitive in the era of great power competition. This involves fostering an educated and empowered workforce skilled at incorporating commercial teams and tools, as well as continued advanced research and rapid experimentation. To achieve this vision, the USSF Data and AI FY 2024 Strategic Action Plan outlines initial actions for organizations to establish processes, build capacity, and align existing efforts. The ultimate goal is to better leverage data as a strategic asset. Key to this strategy is the adoption of modern, adaptive, and agile data and analytic capabilities. This enables secure discovery, access, integration, and use of intelligence data at the speed of mission requirements. Also an Air Force Research Laboratory program for the Space Force, Arachne is the keystone experiment in the Space Solar Power Incremental Demonstrations and Research Project, which aims to prove and mature essential technologies for a prototype space-based solar power transmission system capable of powering a forward operation base. Arachne will specifically demonstrate and mature technologies for more efficient energy generation, radio frequency forming, and radio frequency beaming. Current forward operating bases rely on significant logistics convoys to transport fuel for power. Space-based solar power would move these supply lines to space where they cannot be easily attacked. Much like GPS started as a military program and was opened to civilian use, the Space Force provided space-based solar power that could also transition to everyday use. Other space-based power beaming demonstrators include the Space Power Infrared Regulation and Analysis of Lifetime and Space Power Incremental Deployable Experiments. The Navigation Technology Satellite 3, building on the Space Force's Global Positioning System constellation, is an Air Force Research Laboratory spacecraft that will operate in geosynchronous orbit to test advanced techniques and technologies to detect and mitigate interference to positioning, navigation, and timing capabilities, and increase system resiliency for military, civil, and commercial users. NTS-3 is a Vanguard program that marks potentially game-changing technologies. The Space Force's Rocket Cargo program is another Air Force Research Laboratory Vanguard program which is focused on releasing space launch services to quickly transport military materials to ports across the globe. Now, if proven viable, the Space Force's Space Systems Command is responsible for transitioning it to a program of record. United States Transportation Command would be the primary user of this capability, rapidly launching up to 100 tons of cargo anywhere in the world. By understanding the Space Force's mission, statutory responsibilities, and core functions, we can appreciate this branch's critical role in protecting America's interest in space. As space becomes increasingly contested, the Space Force stands ready to defend the nation's security and prosperity. As space continues to play an increasingly critical role in modern society, the importance of this mission will only continue to grow. What role do you think this would play in humanity's colonization of space? Well, let's hear your thoughts in the comments section. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating and fascinating content. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.